The sky above the South China Sea churned with tension. Radar blips became reality as stealth aircraft cloaked in shadow danced across international airspace. Beneath the clouds, warships from rival nations loomed like steel beasts, their guns quiet, for now. At 42, Commander Mason Kane had seen more than his share of dogfights. A veteran pilot of the U.S. Air Force and the man behind the stick of an F-22 Raptor, he was as silent and focused as the jet he flew. His call sign, Ghost, was earned not just for his skills in stealth flight, but for how he emerged from chaos untouched. But today's mission wasn't about escaping. It was about dominance and survival. High above, beyond the reach of civilian chatter, 4 F-22 Raptors cut through the stratosphere, invisible to conventional radar. Their orders were clear: intercept an advancing fleet of Chinese warplanes believed to be J-20 Mighty Dragons. The Chinese aircraft had been spotted escorting attack helicopters en route to a disputed island. If the helicopters landed, it would trigger a full-scale invasion. Preventing that meant war. But hesitating would mean surrender. Kane's eyes flicked across his HUD as the first signs appeared: 6 J-20s flying in formation, flanked by 2 Z-10 attack helicopters at lower altitude. His wingman, Lieutenant Jordan Vex Reyes, a 29-year-old hotshot with a flair for flair, breathed heavy into comms. Visual acquired. Targets approaching Vector 310, altitude decreasing. They're heading for the island. Kane answered calmly, maintain formation. No one fires until I give the word. Below, the sea reflected faint glimmers of metal and motion, the edge of world history turning beneath the clouds. Then came the chaos. The J-20s broke formation and spread wide, attempting to flank the Raptors. A warning beep echoed through Kane's cockpit: missile lock. Evasive now, he barked, pushing the throttle as his Raptor dove into a roll. A burst of heat shimmered behind as he released flares, narrowly avoiding the missile that streaked past like a meteor. They're engaging. This is no drill, Vex yelled as he pulled up and loosed a sidewinder that exploded one of the J-20's mid-turn. The Chinese fighters answered with a barrage of air-to-air missiles, lighting up the sky in a ballet of death. Kane looped under a J-20, released his own missile, and watched as the aircraft spun into a fireball. But there were too many. One of the Raptors took a direct hit. Mayday! I'm hit! I'm hit! Came the voice of Lieutenant Mackey before his plane spiraled into the ocean. Kane winced. No parachute. No time. As the air battle raged above, the 2 Z-10 helicopters descended toward the contested island, escorted by a remaining J-20 that had broken off from the main fight. They're making a run for it, Vex warned. I'm going after them. Kane hesitated. If Vex left the fight, it would leave him nearly alone against 4 J-20s. But if they allowed the helicopters to land, the consequences would echo across decades. Go. Stop them, Kane ordered. I'll buy you the sky. Vex broke off, diving like a hawk toward the descending Chinese choppers, while Kane re-engaged the incoming fighters with grim resolve. Come on then, he muttered, barrel rolling through a hail of fire. The Raptor's agility, unmatched in the skies, allowed him to dodge death, strike, and vanish like a phantom. He clipped one jet with a cannon burst, disabling its wing. Another collided mid-turn in the confusion. But he was bleeding fuel, warning lights blinking like angry eyes. Down below, Vex had problems of his own. The Z-10s began deploying countermeasures, their machine guns rattling. One unleashed a volley toward the beach below, where American-aligned Marines were mobilizing. Vex swerved between the fire, his own missiles screeching through the wind. He took out the escorting J-20 in one glorious arc, but not before a round of cannon fire peppered his wing. I'm hit, controls sluggish, but I can still fly, he reported. He knew what Kane had sacrificed to give him this shot. Meanwhile, Kane faced the last 2 J-20s. He was alone now. His systems were failing. He could see smoke curling from his port engine. A direct hit would finish him. He'd lost comms with base and didn't know if backup was coming. But surrender was not in his blood. He lured one of the enemy jets into a dive, pretending to stall, then pulled a sudden vertical climb and let gravity do the rest. The enemy overshot and Kane blew it to pieces mid-air. One left. The final J-20 pilot was different, more skilled, more ruthless. It became a game of chess at Mach 2. Every move Kane made, the J-20 countered. Each dive, roll, twist met with a mirror image. For 5 minutes, they danced in a deadly waltz of machines and man. Then a warning, missile lock again. No flares left. No room to dive. Kane whispered, "Forgive me, Vex," then made his choice. He pulled up into the clouds, drawing the J-20 after him. At 50,000 feet, the Raptor stalled, on purpose. As it fell, Kane ejected. Below, his crippled aircraft plummeted straight into the tailing J-20, both jets erupting into flame as Kane's chute bloomed like a blood-red flower in the sky. On the surface, Vex had downed one Z-10. The second was hovering near the beach, preparing to land troops. With his systems damaged and low on fuel, he couldn't risk another pass. Then he heard the explosion above and saw the burning remains of Kane's Raptor streak across the clouds. "Ghost, no," he whispered. Anger boiled in his chest, but something else too, resolve. He dove in for one last run. At mere feet above the tree line, he angled his jet nearly vertical, locked on to the helicopter, and fired. The missile smashed into the cockpit, sending rotor blades and wreckage flying into the jungle. He pulled up just before skimming the trees and barely made it back over open sea before his engine sputtered. 3 hours later, Vex was pulled from the water by a U.S. Navy destroyer. He was soaked, bruised, but alive. As medics helped him aboard, he clutched the dog tags he'd found washed up on the beach, the ones that belonged to Kane. "He saved the island," Vex said hoarsely. "He saved all of us." The news broke worldwide within hours. American F-22s had successfully repelled a surprise incursion by Chinese aircraft. The island remained under Allied control. But there was no public mention of Kane's sacrifice. The Pentagon called it routine deterrence. Only those who had been there knew the truth. Months passed. Vex was promoted. Medals were given. But in a quiet ceremony, on a windswept cliff overlooking the Pacific, Vex placed Kane's dog tags on a monument bearing the names of the fallen. An older man approached him, Kane's father, a retired pilot. "He always said he'd rather vanish in the clouds than grow old in silence," the old man said, placing a hand on Vex's shoulder. "Looks like he got his wish." But as they turned to leave, Vex's phone buzzed. A classified message. His eyes narrowed. Unidentified stealth craft recovered near Taiwan Strait. No body found. Transponder matches F-22 callsign, Ghost. Vex stared into the horizon. Maybe Kane hadn't vanished after all. Maybe the Ghost was still out there, watching, waiting, preparing for the next sky he'd have to protect.